Chapter 19, Devil Horns Grows. At the urging of Laura Gwynn, the DOJ Organized Crime Review Section in D.C. now formally accepted the Devil Horns investigation in San Francisco for RICO prosecution of 20th Street as a criminal enterprise. Consequently, a cadre of trial attorneys from the DOJ gang unit in D.C. were assigned part-time to San Francisco to work on the case in conjunction with the local U.S. attorney. In a large and complex federal case such as this, lawyers directed the investigation. They provided guidance to agents in terms of what crimes to pursue, as well as approving sources who were deemed reliable and good potential trial witnesses. Gwynn's objective now was to identify 10 separate crimes of violence committed by 20th Street that might be uncovered in SFPD's cold cases. She divvied up the work reviewing local police files among her team of prosecutors, eventually analyzing near 50 cases for their potential as predicate offenses for a RICO conspiracy. The agents on Santini's team were assigned to follow up whatever potential leads had been either missed or ignored by SFPD. With the help of Santini's new supervisor, Mark Linen, he recruited a hand-picked group of agents for this new, expanded phase of the investigation. They included Brandon Gunn, one of Santini's former trainees, whom he now considered to be a highly effective agent, a short and stocky guy from Michigan with a passion for crime fighting and a keen drive to follow up all investigative leads. There was also Andrew Chang on the new team, an extremely energetic Bay Area native who spoke Chinese better than English. Regardless of his language issues, Chang was a diligent investigator with a never-quit attitude. He had a wife and 2 youngsters at home, but would spend hours upon hours in the field beating the grass for quality evidence in the case. Also on Santini's dream team was John Martin, a new agent fluent in Spanish, who decided to try his luck at federal law enforcement after graduating college with a degree in chemistry. The group also included Emeralda, a top-notch Spanish translator, to decipher the dozens of recordings obtained during the investigation, as well as Andre, an intelligence research specialist, assigned full-time to the squad to analyze key links between pieces of evidence. A dozen or more other quality agents carefully selected by Santini rounded out the roster. He had started the case with 2 agents and now had a contingent of over 20 reporting to him under the direction of Lynham. In the team's conference room, Santini took a step back and gazed at the large complex pyramid chart he had been developing for 3 years, illustrating the hierarchy of active 20th Street members along with all their suspected crimes, victims, and locations of key events. At the top of the chart was Tigre. Regardless of how active he was or wasn't, he was still the clique's tutelar head. So, Laura Gwynn began when the team came to order during their first meeting as a group. What is RICO? She proceeded to explain to the assembled agents that for them to be successful with the RICO case, they first needed evidence to establish that 20th Street was an enterprise, according to the legal definition. Next, we must prove a pattern of racketeering activity. It must be established that each of the members charged is or was participating in the gang's affairs, she said. This was the most complicated part of the investigation and the main purpose of forming the new team, she explained. Gwynn believed the majority of the defendants would likely be charged with 18 U.S.C. 1962 C RICO conspiracy. An important concept for a successful RICO case was establishing an agreement existed between the alleged conspirators. Under the law, if a group of persons agreed to commit a crime but only one of them actually performed the act, they were all still liable if they agreed in advance that the crime should occur. In fact, the crime didn't even have to be committed, just so long as clear steps were taken in the attempt. Gazing around the room at the assembled team, there finally seemed to Santini to be a clearly attainable goal. Still, it was going to require a lot of pounding the pavement and a higher degree of cooperation from SFPD. It meant Santini's expanded team of agents needed to reinvestigate a large portfolio of unsolved gang-related assaults and homicides in the city's cold case files. When Gwynn finished her briefing, Santini stood up before the group. "I can't emphasize enough how dangerous these thugs are," he said. "These aren't just low-level gang members. Many of them are hardened murderers. Some are master manipulators. They are assassins, thieves, and rapists. Officer safety and the safety of the informants are the first priority over gathering evidence. Any rogue action by any agent to pursue investigative leads is not an option. Everything has to be done above board, and Supervisor Lynham and I need to be aware of all investigative activities," he cautioned. Last, I want to thank you all for joining the Devil's Horns team. You are all a valuable part of what may be the biggest case in agency history. Gwen soon proved she had a keen eye for spotting examples of sloppy police work contained within SFPD's cold case files, quickly convincing Santini's team of agents about the value of following up on shoddy investigations by the city's homicide detectives. Studying the initial SFPD reports on the attempted murder of a Norteño gang member named Adonis Rupo outside the Palisade Pool Hall on Mission Street, Gwen noticed the description provided by an eyewitness who had seen the shooter pull away in a truck. The witness followed the vehicle long enough to get a partial license plate, but apparently SFPD had never followed up on this critical detail. There was also an eyewitness report about a confrontation that occurred inside the pool hall just moments before the shooting, also never investigated. Sifting through thousands of still frames from multiple video surveillance cameras in the pool hall, Special Agent Chang identified a man who looked like the 20th Street gang member Capone. With this evidence and the partial license plate number, the HSI agents visited Capone's place of work, a vehicle towing company in San Bruno. Checking for a truck in the company's fleet that fit the witness's description, they found one. When they examined the company's records for the date that Adonis was shot, it showed Capone had logged the truck out that same day. Capone was screwed. Beyond that, it was clear validation of Gwen's original thesis that SFPD was regularly dropping the ball on gang-related investigations and that some good old-fashioned detective work could yield solid results. In fairness, the local cops were simply overwhelmed by the sheer volume of cases they needed to process to chase down leads effectively, given their available time and resources. It was becoming more and more apparent to Gwen and Santini that murders or attempted murders could well be the main predicate offenses for a RICO case against 20th Street. Santini called Lieutenant Jim Sawyer to request the use of his tactical unit, or Special Weapons and Tactics SWAT team, to service a high-risk warrant for search and arrest on Capone's house, a two-story attached residence in the Hunters Point neighborhood. Early the following Monday morning, the SFPD SWAT team was staged at the front door of Capone's home. Sawyer was the SWAT commander overseeing the warrant execution. Knock notice, he ordered calmly to the team at the front door. The first officer in the stack began pounding on the door, yelling, "Police, search warrant, open the door." He repeated the warning several times with no response from inside. The perimeter team called out that they had spotted a Latino male looking out the second floor window of the residence. They screamed at the man to come downstairs and open the door. He did not comply. Sawyer then called for the breach. His team slammed the door open, and both the upstairs and downstairs SWAT units performed a tactical entry. The upstairs team immediately took 5 persons into custody. The downstairs team moved swiftly through the garage area where they located a living quarters with a locked bedroom door. An officer swiftly kicked the door open, busting the lock and door jamb. As the first officer moved into the bedroom, he observed Capone standing at the sliding glass door that led to an outside deck. He was holding a semi-automatic pistol in each hand, and the officer found Capone's chest area in his EOT Tech sight. One swing of the hand and Capone would be shot center mass in the vital organ area. Instead, the thug nervously tossed the guns onto the deck and raised his hands in submission. Santini was certain Capone was a drug dealer and murderer. Having him off the street was obviously a form of progress. Unfortunately, the gang had proved it was able to fill personal voids quickly, and the job of dismantling their enterprise was not easily done. Santini raised his hand and swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. He took a seat on the witness stand and surveyed the group of federal grand jury members. They would be the ones to decide whether to issue RICO indictments against 30 or more members of 20th Street, with Ivan Cerna, aka Tigre, named as the leader of the criminal organization. Based on his personal experience living in the Bay Area, Santini was worried the grand jury might be compromised of too many left-wing granola types from liberal bastions such as Berkeley. He feared the jury, if they were a bunch of politically correct progressives, would look at the place of origin and ethnicity of the accused and then take one look at him, Santini, a clear-cut white federal cop, and decide this was just another case of the establishment persecuting society's disadvantaged. He tried to read the faces and body language of the jury members for signs of distrust or scorn for police. The obvious gestures or subtle looks of suspicion for power-hungry, power-happy, puffed up cops. He scanned their hairstyles and clothing, checking for Birkenstock shoes or beaded necklaces on the men, or hairy legs and bushy armpits on the women. They appeared, much to Santini's relief, to be mostly a bunch of average-looking blue and white-collar folks. Beginning after her presentation to the grand jury, Gwen walked Santini through an introductory background presentation for the case they rehearsed the day before. As Gwen led Santini through his testimony, the two settled into a comfortable question and answer rhythm. He was impressed and put at ease by her obvious skill at running a court proceeding. The jury appeared to like her style too. She guided Santini through a concise 20-minute synopsis of the 20th Street clique, including its composition, origins, characteristics, area of operation, transitional nexus, and criminal activities. After that, Santini's part in the grand jury's first day of testimony was done. He exited the hearing room since only the prosecutor, jury, witnesses, and court reporter were permitted to be present during the proceedings. Waiting outside in the lobby to testify next were two Norteño gang members who had been subpoenaed to give witness testimony about violent attacks they suffered from 20th Street members. Later that same evening, Santini and Gwen met for dinner to discuss how things had gone at the proceedings following his testimony. She told him the Norteños had provided compelling evidence about violent attacks by the 20th Street gang. The jury seemed to be strongly impacted by their stories. So far so good, Gwen indicated, and Santini was reassured that she was firmly in charge of the prosecution. They ordered a bottle of wine with dinner. Gwen, whose favorite pastime was sailing a 30-foot sloop on the Chesapeake Bay, also knew her vino. Relieved that the critical grand jury process seemed to have kicked off positively, Santini savored his first sip of a deep red zin. He was practically giddy over Gwen's determination to destroy 20th Street, which equaled his own sense of commitment to the mission. She had assumed firm leadership of the case by now, taking a struggling investigation and transforming it into a legitimate racketeering prosecution.